Hello, and welcome to the second episode of our Energy Transition in Conversation series. My name's Owen. I head up the Energy Transition team here at Reuters Events, and over the coming weeks, we'll be joined with CEOs from across the energy spectrum who are committed to a sustainable energy future and ready to tackle the energy transition head on. Today, we have the privilege of being joined by Dr. Pratima Rangarajan, Chief Executive Officer of OGCI Climate Investments, a $1 billion fund launched in 2016 by the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, and a CEO-led consortium that aims to accelerate industry response to climate change. Pratima, thank you for joining us. How is everything for you at these slightly uncertain times?
It is my pleasure to join you here today. I think we are, the climate challenge has not solved itself, so we're quite busy.
Yeah,
but other than that, challenging.
For those who aren't as kind of familiar with the work you do, maybe just to start with, it would be kind of good to hear a little bit more about what the OGCI Climate Investments is and a bit more about the work that you're doing.
Certainly. Climate Investments is a unique fund because we were set up to reduce carbon emissions. We're part of the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, or OGCI, which is a consortium of some of the world's largest oil and gas producers that have come together to take joint practical action on climate change. At Climate Investments, or CI, as we call ourselves, we invest only in solutions that can demonstrably reduce methane or reduce carbon dioxide emissions. So we're about 3 years old, as you mentioned. We have 19 investments across multiple sectors. We do invest in oil and gas, of course, but also industries like cement, iron and steel, chemicals, power generation. We have investments in commercial transportation and commercial HVAC, air conditioning. All of these sectors have pretty high carbon emissions footprint. And our investments, although they span a diverse range of sectors, our investments have 3 elements in common. They all reduce carbon, they're all economic, and they can be implemented globally. Our success is measured by our carbon impact, and we need to deliver pretty quickly. So we also collaborate quite extensively, especially with our member companies with whom we like to take innovations to market faster.
Okay, no, that's great. Kind of looking at that kind of investment ecosystem, then how broad is that? I know you kind of touched on it being kind of more than just energy, but kind of how broad does that really kind of stretch? And are there any examples of kind of collaborations with any members that you've kind of got on board so far?
Yeah, absolutely. We're very unique in that we have this diverse member group behind us that doesn't just provide capital, but provides access to expertise and resources. So we use the members to evaluate new investments. We use them to pilot our technologies, but we also use them to commercialize and bring to scale. So maybe a good example would be one in the United Kingdom, a project called Net Zero Teesside. It's a carbon capture and storage project in Teesside in the northeast of England. So we purchased this project from the Energy Technologies Institute in the UK in 2017. One of our member companies, ENI, gave us a project leader for it, project director, and we grew this project working with the UK government, understanding the needs of the UK. And now we're very happy, pleased that this project has graduated from our fund. And it is now being led by BP with 4 of our other member companies, ENI, Equinor, Shell, and Total. So this project actually has these 5 member companies pulling it together. They're working with all the industrial emitters in Teesside. They're working with the Teesside local government. They're working with the central government in the United Kingdom. And the goal is very ambitious. It is to decarbonize the northeast of England and thus help the United Kingdom achieve its 2050 objectives, climate objectives. Now, you can see this collaboration with our member companies allows us not just to get innovations to market faster, but also to address problems that are much bigger than the fund itself. So we're able to do some unique unique activities in carbon reduction.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I think kind of obviously funds and organizations like yours are really kind of clear evidence that the energy sector is really kind of beginning to act on these issues of climate. That said, there is still a feeling amongst us that not enough is not being done, and to some extent the energy transition is failing. How would you evaluate then the success of kind of decarbonisation efforts so far, be that obviously within oil and gas or kind of more generally within the energy sector?
The energy transition does need to move faster, but Owen, that's not enough. The climate challenge requires us to do deep decarbonization across all parts of our society. And this is actually a carbon challenge that's going to take a societal transformation. Human endeavors, human activities produce about 50 billion tons of greenhouse gases annually. It's mostly carbon. And these are produced because everything we do, what we eat, how we live, our transport, the clothes, everything we touch results in some type of environmental disturbance, and we leave a carbon footprint. So we need to actually decarbonize across multiple sectors and across our society. So yes, we do need to do more as private sector. We do need deeper decarbonizations, but it's not just in the energy. It's going to be multiple decarbonizations. So private sector needs to do more to not only commit, but to deliver deeper decarbonization. But we also need governments to put in place strong policies that drive us towards our low carbon future. And finally, we have more control as individuals than we think. We really need to drive to lower demand through increased efficiency. Turn it down, turn it off, and don't buy it if you don't need it. Every one of these things will have a huge impact. But we're all in it together, and it's going to take a much deeper decarbonization. We need to get started.
Sure. I think then kind of looking at that deeper decarbonization that you talk of, are there any kind of technologies in particular that you really think could kind of trigger that's kind of step change in progress that we need?
I think there are lots of, maybe I'll talk about our methane initiatives because they are very relevant to the oil and gas sector, to the energy sector. Methane is one area that is finding and fixing methane emissions is core to climate investments mandate. And we have multiple technologies. We have 6 investments in this area. These investments detect, measure, and fix methane emissions. And we're going to continue making these type of cost-effective as well as innovative investments. However, as I look at 2020, it seems to me that this is not enough. We're quite concerned that the actual efforts to mitigate and fix emissions in the field in oil and gas operations may be slowed down this year due to capital constraints post-COVID. So in light of this week, Climate Investments is announcing our new call for proposals.
Oh, wow.
We have an investment pool set aside for projects that can demonstrably reduce methane emissions in the field anywhere in the oil and gas value chain. So if you're an owner, an operator, a developer, or a service provider, and you have a project that can substantially reduce methane emissions in oil and gas operations, and you are in need of capital, please apply at our website. We are, of course, as you know, not a grant-making organization, so we will be looking for operationally and financially capable projects that we can invest in. But our goal here, Owen, is to demonstrate that economic and capable business models exist today to stop methane emissions. We believe that if we can do that and demonstrate with multiple business models, then they can be scaled globally, and will also attract more capital into these kind of activities. So as you asked, there's a lot to be done. Methane emissions are important, and we need to fix them. out in the field where it actually makes the real difference.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's brilliant, brilliant news, and obviously thanks for kind of sharing with us. For kind of that proposals and submission process, how do companies then, if they have got these kind of technologies or working on these projects, how do they go about kind of submitting those, and then when will you look to kind of start actually allocating funds and start moving on this stuff?
So all submissions are open as of this week. So, and you will find information on our website, OGCI Climate Investments, where this call for proposals is going to be open till mid-September, but we'll look at proposals as and when they come in. Please note that the call is very broad. We have no limitations on geography. We have no limitations on where in this value chain, whether it's upstream, midstream, downstream. We will look at all proposals, and we do not have a cap on the investment pool either. We really believe that the broader the call, the more we will learn about how best and what most effective ways to reduce methane emissions. So we remain very hopeful that we will find some excellent partners in this venture.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a kind of a brilliant new venture to be starting on. I think that is definitely one of those ways that we can really start to kind of turn the dial on energy transition, and a really valuable initiative. Aside from that kind of methane aspect, I know you work on kind of two other pillars at OGCI. Could you talk to us a little bit more about how you're progressing with those projects, and how everything's going on that side?
Well, thank you. Yes, we work on carbon dioxide efficiency as well, which is very important. This is about making sure that we are as efficient as possible in using either energy or natural resources in products and services, so we can dial down the carbon dioxide intensity in products and services we use every day, whether it's cement, steel, whether it's truck transport, air conditioning, shipping. We find across the spectrum of industries, there is so much opportunity for us to drive down emissions just by looking at efficiency. It's a really, really important piece, and anybody can achieve greater efficiencies, whether you're private sector, whether you're an individual, or the public sector. So that's one of our areas. Our second area is in carbon capture, utilization, and storage, where we have both investments in projects as well as investments in technologies. And our technology investments are around lowering the cost of capture and finding new uses for the carbon dioxide molecule so we can reuse it. We think of CCUS as a method of recycling the carbon dioxide. So instead of going up into the atmosphere, we can actually capture the CO2 molecule and either put it into another useful product, or we can store it underground. Either way, the CO2 doesn't go into the atmosphere and doesn't cause more global warming. So, and both of those are going great. We find opportunities every day. It's not for lack of problems to solve.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Brilliant. I think kind of bringing it back round to kind of the methane proposal and kind of the call for papers that you've kind of launched with us today. In kind of today's climate, we're seeing kind of, like you mentioned at the beginning, kind of falling capital expenditures, and obviously the oil and gas industry particularly has been hit hard by COVID-19. Do you foresee kind of drops in investments from either operators you work with or from funds like yours in this period, and kind of what impact more widely do you think COVID will have then on the energy transition?
That's a great question. From our perspective, the OGCI perspective, no, there is no change in ambition. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, our CEOs published an open letter. Our fund is still investing, and we've announced many new investments this year. However, when we look at, when we actually look at the impact of COVID, it's clear that everybody's grappling with the changes from a societal perspective, from an economic perspective, and there have been significant changes from a health perspective. However, when we look at the impact from an emissions perspective, it's quite surprising. The estimates are that the COVID pandemic will only result in a decrease of about 4 to 8% in carbon dioxide emissions in 2020. Now, to put this in perspective, 4 to 8% is what we need to deliver year over year for decades in order to manage our carbon challenge and achieve our climate targets. And we need to do this without upending our society and creating the vacuum we have today. But
Sure.
And so this is why, again, I'll say that it requires a societal transformation, because it requires a change in the way we operate and the change in our lifestyles. But the good news is that at this moment in time, we actually have a chance to start this transformation. Coming through the COVID, most countries are putting together post-COVID recovery plans. These include billions of dollars in infrastructure spending and job creation. We need to tie these plans and this spend to the country's climate targets. Mm-hmm. That is an opportunity.
Yeah.
Similarly, the private sector or companies are putting together their post-COVID strategies. And we need to see substantive and ambitious decline in carbon emissions from these companies. If we can take advantage of both these strategies and drive our societal transformation, then I think we've got a great chance. But the timing is now, where we are running out of time, and we must act.
Absolutely, I think, yeah, I can completely agree, and I think kind of the work that you guys are doing is really about that. And as I say, once again, with regards to kind of the announcement today, that's brilliant. Looking forward. How at all, if at all, really, have then the investments that you've kind of made so far, obviously in the first kind of 3 years, have you seen them being affected by the current fluctuations and obviously the pandemic? Is that being kind of impacted, or are they kind of forging ahead?
Most of them are forging ahead. They have excellent teams that are managing through this through the downturn. They also have excellent co-investors. We have excellent co-investors we sit with who are all looking out for their companies. So we think we're expecting most of them to survive and do very well. Now, we've invested in these companies because we think they will survive in today's world, they will survive in the post-COVID world, and they will do well. However, if and when the governments put low carbon policies in place, they will do fantastically, because these are the innovators that will take us into the low carbon future. And so we need to see more of that. We need to see policies in place from the governments encouraging purchase of low carbon products and services. We would love to see supply chains, both in the private and the public sector, putting carbon targets and carbon reduction in all their RFPs and their requests for products and services, whether it's in building materials or delivery trucks. That's what we need across society in order to drive these new innovations out into the market and to see the true impact.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you touch on that kind of policy point there as well. If you were to put together kind of a wish list for kind of policy that you think would really make a kind of a big impact now, is there anything that would really be at the top of that list? Is there anything that you really think would once again kind of turn that dial on energy transition that you talk to kind of throughout this discussion?
Yeah, well, I think it's very difficult to focus in on one policy that will work around the world, because all countries manage their policies in different ways. But I will say that there's a common theme across the board, which is a value for carbon. It is very difficult for society, or either financially or in terms of resources, to really to take action about something which has no value. So we need, whether it's through a pricing mechanism or a tax adjustment or regulatory regimes, we need to put some value on carbon. So we will treat it like a resource that we actually care about. And without that value on carbon, it's very difficult to change the direction of society and create the transformation that we need into a low carbon world.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and kind of talking again then to that kind of carbon pricing. Is that something that you think is realistic on a global, or are you looking more kind of nationally at those kind of things being able to really kind of move on this?
I think we need leaders, and we'd love to see some countries take leadership.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's really interesting. I mean, your announcement today as well, and kind of the wider work you do as well, is really kind of brilliant and demonstrates that tangible commitment being made by the work you do, and also your partners as well, and obviously the 10 companies with the OGCI. That said, there is a feeling, and when you talk to energy transition and you talk to folks on the renewable side of the spectrum, for instance, there is a feeling potentially that those who continue to emit hydrocarbons and those companies that still emit GHGs really should not and cannot be part of the solution. What would you say to somebody who kind of posed that question to you as someone working with OGCI?
We need a societal transformation to drive carbon out of the systems, from what we use, what we eat, from what we produce. And this societal transformation should not leave any part of society behind. We have today many countries who have not met their climate targets.
Sure.
Right? Do we write them off? No, we need them to participate. So the oil and gas industry, the energy industry, has millions of highly qualified, smart, passionate people. We need their innovation, and we need them to help solve the problems for the energy transition, for the societal transformation to low carbon, right? And many of these companies, the oil and gas companies, have already committed some very ambitious targets, including net zero carbon. Their people are already working on it. Why would we ask them to stop?
Sure.
We need every piece of action that we can get. The climate challenge can only be solved by collective action of all parts of society. We're all part of the problem, and we all need to be part of the solution. I think it's time to stop the debates and just move to action, personally.
Yeah, no, I would agree as well. And I think just a final point on that really is then kind of looking forward then and looking to the solutions in this post-COVID world that we hope that we'll be soon moving into. Are there any kind of technologies that really you look at and think those would really hold the most value looking forward and really help us kind of provide the solutions to kind of move on in this post-COVID era?
As a technologist, I'm going to confess to something, which is I don't think the issue is technology. The technologists and innovators around the world, if you give them a problem to solve with an economic business case, they will solve it. They have proven this time and again. The real issue is to create a demand for low carbon products and services. So
Sure.
I'll come back to what we really need is policy. We need supply chains. We need demand for low carbon in everything we do. And we know million innovators who get up there and solve the problem. But we need to scale up quickly, and we don't have a lot of time. So I'm looking forward to seeing more demand at the end of this webinar, clearly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's brilliant. I think that's coming on to all we've just about got time for today. Again, Pratima, a massive thank you for joining us. It's a privilege, and also thank you to everybody tuning in today or listening to this session on demand. Just to remind us, Pratima, the applications are now open, I believe, and we can go live. And when will they be? When will you be first assessing those ones? Just again for everyone tuned in.
As they come in.
Brilliant. Brilliant. The next episode will be tomorrow actually, and feature Axel Thiemann, CEO of Sonadix. So be sure to tune into that one, guys. Again, once again, a massive thank you, Pratima, for your time and for sharing everything with us today. Best of luck with the new program, and we look forward to seeing the results.
Super. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. Brilliant. Bye bye.